Hey guys, it's Brad with Tin Soldier Racecars. We're back with another tech tip video. Today we're going to be talking about how to install our 4-link brackets on your car. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get the car up. If you have a chassis table, that's awesome. That'll make your life easier. If not, that's okay. You can do it on jack stands on your garage floor as well. But you just want to get the car up off the ground and at a good working height, and then get the car as level as you can possibly get it. So once we get the car level, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to find the center of the rear wheel opening. So I have a plumb bob here that I've just taped to the fender, and I've dropped and just kind of eyeballed the center of the wheel opening. And then I'm going to come down with a tape measure, stretch it across, and you can see this wheel opening's 28 inches wide. So the plumb bob, you need to drop about 14 inches, as center of the wheel opening. So, find the center of the wheel opening with your plumb bob, make a mark up here if you need to, and then down on the ground, you can make another mark, and that's center of the wheel opening is going to be center where our rear end is going to be. If you have a chassis table, obviously you can mark this on the chassis table, but if not, that's okay. You can use the ground and just put a mark down here, go to the other side, do the same thing, and then draw you a line. And that's going to be basically the center of our rear end. Now we're going to go on the inside of the car and talk about actually mounting the brackets to the chassis. Now that we know where the center of the rear axle is, we're going to be able to measure forward and figure out where this bar needs to go that our 4-link brackets are going to mount off of. So if you go on our website, we have the dimensions listed on the 4-link bracket page for our traditional small tire brackets and our radial brackets. There's two different sheets on there, but the dimensions are pretty close. Ricky's gonna overlay them on here now. So these are suggested dimensions. This is what we've found works best with most small tire cars, slick or radial. So on the radial brackets, we like to run a little bit shorter bar on a lower horsepower car. On a higher horsepower car, we'll actually stretch that bar out a little bit and make it the same length bar, lower bar as our traditional small tire brackets. So that's why you'll see the two different measurements there. But anything in this range will work. On my chassis table here, I've set this bar up. This simulates the center of our rear end. So you can measure forward and find on the frame rail. You can see this one's 21 inches forward of rear axle center line. So now my 4-link brackets are going to mount right off this bar. We get a lot of questions of how high or low this bar needs to be. I have on there recommended 4.5 inches off the ground. But it's not super critical that you have to hit that exact dimension. If the car's a little higher or a little lower, that's okay. I always just try to get the bar as low as I can on the frame rail. So you can see on this car, it's even with the bottom of the factory frame rail. If you have a full frame car like a G-body or this Corvette, you can land this bar directly to the frame rail. If you have a unibody car like a Mustang, you're going to want to put a floor plate here, like a 6x6 1/8-inch plate or something, and then land your bar into the floor plate just to make it stronger. But just get this bar as low as you can get it in the car, and then get the ride height as low as you can get it. If it's 5.5, 6 inches off the ground, it's okay. The 4-link's still going to work fine. You have enough adjustment here. It's not going to be a big deal. It's just, that's what we're shooting for, is 4.5 inches. Once we've figured out where we need this bar to be in the car, we'll make some marks on the rocker or on the frame rail. Go ahead and cut this bar and kind of get it rough fitted in here. And then you want to square this bar up as square as you can get it in the car. You can get it really close just by measuring off some factory holes in the frame rail or factory spot welds. You can get it pretty close, but it's always best, especially if you don't have a chassis table to check squareness off of, to drop a plumb bob all the way in the front of the car and triangulate it back, just like we did in our 4-link video when we were squaring the rear end housing up. And that way you know that this bar is perfectly square in the car. If you get it a little bit off, again, it's okay. That's why the 4-link bars have adjustment in them. But It's going to make your life a lot easier going forward if this bar is square, because then all your 4-link bars are going to be the same length, and it's just going to be easier to set up from the get-go. So just take your time and try to get this bar as square as you can in the car. If you're building a full tube chassis car, a lot of times your 4-link brackets are going to mount directly off of the number 1 bar, which is the bar that the main hoop sits on. On this car, because it's a really short wheelbase, the 4-link brackets are going to mount directly off the number 1 bar. If you have a real long wheelbase car or a truck, you might have to put a second bar back behind this bar to get your 4-link the correct length. And that's not a big deal. It can either bend back off here and back forward, or it can just be a completely separate bar back between the frame rails or something. If you have a car that's real low to the ground and kind of short wheelbase, you can get away with this bar being flat and not having any bend down in for the drive shaft. But if your car is going to sit a little bit higher off the ground, or if it's something that's a longer wheelbase where this bar is farther away from the back of the transmission, then you're probably going to have to put a bend in here for some drive shaft clearance. Once we got this bar tacked in and square and exactly where we want it, now we're ready to go ahead and tack our 4-link brackets on. So the first thing we want to do is take our 4-link jig spacers and stick them between the brackets. So this is going to hold your brackets 3/4 of an inch apart. If you buy our spacers off our website, they're actually machined to 770 wide, and the 4-link rod ends are 750 wide. So what this does is it sets the brackets about 20 thousandths wider than the rod end, which will give you a little bit of wiggle room for if it pulls when you're welding, or for paint, powder coat, stuff like that. So you don't have to use our spacers. You can use a bunch of washers or cut your own spacers, but we do sell these on the website, and they make things really easy. They look just like this here. So once we got these spacers in here and got our brackets bolted together, we can figure out how wide we want the brackets in the car. A typical small tire car, we run the brackets anywhere from 19 to 25 inches wide on center. It really doesn't matter as much on a small tire car, because you're not worried as much about fitting a 17-inch wide tire in here. But I still like to build them fairly narrow so that we have lots of tire clearance, and it doesn't really matter how wide they are. A car with a 19-inch 4-link spread is going to work the exact same as a car with a 24-inch 4-link spread. So once we got our brackets marked out where we want them, we're ready to go ahead and tack them on. The bracket will fit right into the notch on the tube. This is set up for an 1 5/8 tube. And then you just want to get the back of your bracket just level up and down. You can actually tack on both sets of brackets at the same time. This is a little cheat that I like to do, is you can get a piece of all thread, and you can actually bolt your brackets together on the table and set your 4-link spacing, and then you can tack both sets of brackets on at the same time. That just makes it a little bit easier of holding your space and holding the brackets square to each other. With our radial brackets, they will go on the same way, notch on the bottom, but instead of being notched for a tube on top, you're going to have a tube that goes through both of them and ties them together. So on the regular chassis brackets, you're normally just going to have a tube that sits in here that either goes between the main hoop or between the frame rails or whatever. And on the radial brackets, this tube's going to be offset a lot farther back, and then a lot of times you'll just tie into this tube. This is also notched for an 1 5/8 hole. The radial brackets are 12 inches tall from here to here, and our regular chassis brackets are 15 inches tall from tube to tube, but they're able to be shortened all the way down to 12 inches. Once we got our 4-link brackets all tacked in and this top bar all tacked in, then we're ready to finish out the rest of our chassis or make our 4-link bars, get our rear end hanging in here, and mount our shocks. That's pretty much the order of operations and how you mount a set of 4-link brackets. Get the car up, get it level, find the center of the rear axle, measure forward, get this tube in here as low in the car as you can get it. I will say it doesn't need to be dropped down or anything. It can just be like level with the bottom of the rockers or bottom of the frame rail again. But yeah, get this tube in here, figure out your 4-link width, get your brackets tacked on, and get them level and squared up. If you guys got any other questions, make sure, again, you go and check out the dimensions on our website. And if you have any other questions, give us a call. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. See ya.